understanding the connections between energy, economics, politics, and culture. This is independent media. From Whitehorse, Yukon, this is Bread with Circus Radio.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome once again to the Bread with Circus radio program. My name is Alex, broadcasting on 92.5 CJUC FM in Whitehorse, Yukon. The show is also heard all over the World Wide Web, podcasting out at www.breadwithcircus.com. My name's Alex. If you want to send me an email, get in touch with me, you can. host@breadwithcircus.com is the email address. So I know I haven't done a program in a little while. Real life has gotten in the way of this podcast website side project that I'm doing. But I'm sufficiently motivated to get back in front of the microphone today, given some recent events down in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm talking, of course, about the massive oil spill. It's just occurred, so I'm recording this program right at the beginning of May. So it's just now becoming clear the extent of the disaster on the oil rig. Don't quite know what's going to happen yet. As I record this, oil is just starting to come ashore in Louisiana. I want to spend a lot of time today talking about the potential impact of this big event, what it's going to mean for the environment, what it's going to mean for the economy, and what it's going to mean for the fossil fuel way of life going forward. I think we've hit a major turning point here. This oil spill will have the same impact on fossil fuel energy that Chernobyl had on nuclear energy. This is the oil industry's Chernobyl. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Goldman Sachs today, a massive investment bank. A lot of you have been hearing about Goldman Sachs in the news. You may not have a great understanding about what they're accused of doing, what it actually means. I've looked into it some, so I'm going to kind of walk you through it, give you a Goldman Sachs 101. Fraudonomics. But I'm going to start talking about this oil spill thing. So this story started as an explosion and fire, April the 20th, the Tuesday. Somewhat auspicious day in history, isn't it? They have an explosion on an oil rig. I'm not sure why the thing blew up. I haven't got an update on that. Conspiracy theories all over the internet, of course, but nobody knows what happened there. So the thing blows up and sinks, and that's the story for the first few days. We're worried about the workers who went missing, 11 of them, and people aren't really aware of the fact that the explosion has damaged the wellhead. So essentially what we've got on the ocean floor is a gusher. Seen the movie There Will Be Blood? The scene where the main character's son is deafened in the first place. Remember, the gusher explodes. And then there's your visual image. Shooting out oil at massive pressure deep under the water. Now to begin with, people didn't know that was happening, or maybe British Petroleum did, and didn't want to say anything. So we got an initial story that it might be leaking a little bit of oil. And then they said it's 5 times worse. And then they said it's 5 times worse than that, and now we're already worse than the Exxon Valdez disaster that took place in the 1980s. So it's a whole lot of oil. Currently almost a 100-kilometer wide oil slick in the Gulf of Mexico, and is coming ashore. I'm going to move this discussion in a couple of different directions. I want to play out some scenarios. Yesterday, Barack Obama went on television and said that they're preparing for the worst-case scenario, but he didn't really let on as to what the worst-case scenario might be. I've got a few suggestions, and it's kind of scary if you live around the Gulf Coast or if you live even 100 kilometers inland from there. So I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about how we got here and where we're going as a result of this disaster. So first, the scenarios. Okay, clearly there's some givens here. It's an environmental disaster, right? All the fish and birds and other assorted wildlife nesting in the swamps there, they're done for. They're not going to be able to clean this up. So the fishery is finished. There's a couple million fishermen around the Gulf. So none of that. The Bubba Gump shrimp boat is out of business. So that kind of hurts. Shipping could be disrupted. I don't know whether vessels can pass through the oil slick. I don't imagine they can. And if it continues to widen and it chokes up the delta, the Mississippi River, there's a problem upstream because you can't get the ships through. That goes for all matter of things. New Orleans is a giant port city. That's mainly what they do. That's the reason for it being a major establishment. It's the port at the mouth of the river, and then they ship things up to, St. Louis, into the heartland. Or they ship things out down the river and overseas. So there's a logistical problem if the Mississippi River Delta becomes impassable. So that kind of sucks economically. Another economic impact is the oil itself. You're going to lose that well's production, which in the grand scheme of things is not a whole lot. But there's a whole lot of other oil platforms in the vicinity. And can they make their deliveries now? I mean, they got to pump this stuff off of the platforms and transport it, make it usable. So can they get around? Can they get their oil ashore? All the other ones. Maybe, maybe not. And then we've got the tourism impact. Those beautiful beaches along the Gulf. It's nice, sandy, clean beaches. Well, you don't want to go there anymore, do you? It's got a funny smell now. So you can cancel your vacation to Biloxi, Mississippi. You can cancel your vacation to Tampa, Florida. You can cancel your vacation to, down far as Mexico. The Caribbean islands are in there. Jamaica's going to have a funny smell over it, and not that pleasant kind we normally associate with Jamaica. Big economic problems there. Again, I'm recording this really early on, so I'm just forecasting. And you know what? You can see how my predictions play out here and judge my credibility based upon it. I'll take that risk. So these are the economic impacts. Obviously, the environmental impacts are no good because you're going to have a whole bunch of dead fish and birds, and the things at the bottom of the food chain are going to be hurt badly. So the things higher up the food chain will eventually be affected. But that's the least of the concerns, because this could turn into a much more wide-reaching disaster, one that will affect you and I. So I want to forecast a couple of really ugly scenarios here. There's some worst-case scenario stuff. Hey, Obama said be prepared for the worst-case scenario. Well, I've got a few projections for you that I haven't heard discussed that really should be considered. Now, what if the oil gets out of the Gulf? What are the current patterns there? Now, I'm pretty sure the Gulf Stream, I think it's the Gulf Stream, that conveyor belt thing in the ocean, oil could get out of the Gulf, loop its way around Florida, up the eastern seaboard of the United States, and then over to our friends in northern Europe. So, more widespread than the Gulf. We could have oil on beaches all the way up the coast. My friends in Halifax, you could find your beaches a little bit oil-soaked down the road. I don't know what kind of dilution there will be. This well is still gushing away. I don't know how much oil is in the chamber altogether, but I've heard projections that it may take 2 months, 3 months to stop this thing. There's very little they can do. Currently they're talking about dispersants, chemicals being used on it. Here's a quick experiment. Get a pan full of water and put some pepper in it, black pepper, let it float around, and then dump some soap in it and you see the pepper scatter, right? This is the sort of thing they're going to do to try to treat the oil, to disperse it, use the soap to spread it out. Well, it's still there, right? It's just going to sink down, and our whole marine ecosystem is going to have a oily tinge to it because, as you see, doing that experiment, the pepper doesn't disappear. So this is flowing into the Atlantic Ocean and eventually all the oceans.